Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Spotlight. Today we have here Kodi, who is a fractional CMO and consultant, owner of Me in the Club. And what's really cool about him is that he specializes in the entertainment business, music, etc. Kodi, tell us more about yourself.
Thank you, Ada. To talk a little bit about myself, I specialize in building creative businesses. So, I previously was the successful co-founder and partner in a music agency that started about 9 years ago to a successful exit from that earlier this year. Now I'm working full time with businesses from just about anywhere in the globe, and especially those that are more focused on music, more focused on graphic design. Anybody who's got an interesting startup idea that I think I can help from an entertainment perspective, that's who I work with.
Amazing. I'm super excited for your perspective. I think it will give freshness to the show and it'll show people that it's not just regular businesses that need a proper strategy. Like if you're a musician, if you have an events company, you also need people to drive people from awareness to conversion. And I think most of these businesses don't really have it together when it comes to a proper strategy.
We're in an extremely interesting situation in the entertainment business now because, artists and musicians and, even illustrators, they didn't have to do all the entrepreneurship stuff.
Yeah.
Even 15 years ago, arguably even 10 years ago. And a lot of times now you're in this position where everything has to be done, with a lot of action in mind and a lot of real understanding of who your customers are and who you're trying to reach. And so I aim to kind of be the person riding shotgun for those people because, it's one thing to be excited to engage with your fans. It's another thing entirely to actually succeed in doing so. And it takes a certain type of mindset to do it.
Of course, like any real business. Okay, so for today, we have picked a random artist. So I'm gonna call him Kevin for today. This is the strategy that we have in place. So if someone comes to you, let's say the artist comes to you, like he wants to implement this plan, how would you approach this? What would you take into consideration beforehand?
So going with our friend Kevin here that we've just mentioned, I'm taking this from the perspective of Kevin being an individual musician, and there's a lot of points to consider here. One thing that I think is a key point in the buyer journey that Kevin's addressing is that everything is very dependent on action. It's really difficult to automate any aspect of how you engage with your fans when you're a musician. It's one of the most difficult things about the industry.
Yeah.
And so I think when we go from that perspective and we keep in mind that everything is about a launch or leveraging a way that you're communicating, that's a good palate cleanser to start because, I think a lot of artists get in their head about how tough this is. And yes, it is exactly that tough, which is why I try to help it as much as I can. So let's take this apart kind of piece by piece. The first action that we've got in here is, you're leveraging your social, your earned media, and your digital presence to introduce new music to fans. This is actually the part that I think most artists have a difficult time with. A lot of artists get really in their heads about this and they say, I don't know the right way to start. I don't know the right way to present myself. I am not necessarily somebody who makes content by my nature. It feels weird to make content that's engaging with people and beyond my own music. And I say to them, that's reasonable. I think the thing that you have to understand is that whatever plan you have to do this, being consistent with it and sticking with that plan is really 9/10 of what you actually have to do. Now, there's ways to pace this so that, you're making sure that you're talking about, things that interest you in life, music that you like that's not you, things in your community that are happening that are interesting and compelling. All these things are important to include in addition to saying, hey, I have a new song coming out. I have a record coming out this year. Like all of these things are worth taking into consideration. You want to give people the most comprehensive idea of yourself, and that helps them have an authentic engagement with you. So that's the first step. Now, I think when we get to the next steps to this, and Ada, please feel free to stop me at
Of
any time
course.
in this. When we get to the next steps to this, the second step is interesting because you've got basically two things you have to think about. You have first of all the moment where you offer anybody who's a fan free access to music downloads you have or online exclusives. When I say online exclusives, I'm talking about stuff like Bandcamp Friday, for example, is really popular, where you might have a download that's on Bandcamp for the entire day that is in theory for free, or it's pay what you want. But if you pay what you want, then the maximal amount of profit actually goes to the artist on that one day a month. So there are reasons to do those sorts of things. But when we're talking about music downloads, that's not just hard downloads, that's also streaming. A large part of the initial engagement with your buyers to try to get people to follow you on Spotify or Apple Music or all the different streaming services out there. And yeah, there's a real conversion process that goes into that. So that has to be covered as kind of the first step of somebody, having a deeper awareness of you. The other thing is associations you might have with other artists and industry. You might have an artist that is just obsessed with you. I remember many years ago, I had an artist that I was working with where Tyler, the creator, had given them a shout out, and it was the first step in them becoming much, much, much more famous, even though they were an indie pop band. He just really liked them. So that alone was something where people could go, oh, I want to engage with this now. I want to see what this band is. The other part is that, when we talk about associations with other artists, there are usually other artists who at least like an artist that's doing anything. Maybe they've played shows together. Maybe they're going to go on tour together. Maybe they've guested on each other's songs. A lot of what you're trying to do is make sure that you're not just by yourself in the wider
Yeah.
ecosystem of what you can listen to. So that's kind of the second thing that you have to take into account at the same time. And those are the two moments where you start really pulling people in. Now, from there, your next step is that there's a conversion process that happens where, for one thing, you can create your own community for people. You can establish a Discord server or a mailing list where fans and other musicians can connect with you. The Discord server example is more popular than you might think. The band Health is amazing at this,
Oh,
for example.
absolutely.
They are so good at it. Yeah, exactly. In fact, I would say that their personality and who they are online all ties back to their Discord server, to the point that their Discord server is linked on other socials they do. They're very smart with this. The other one is, the mailing list that we're talking about. One of the things that I constantly tell artists that I'm working with, and one of the things that I always try to get through in my consulting efforts, and this is also something that I think is important to larger businesses of any kind, you should always be using what you rent to pull people towards what you own. Mailing lists are something that you have permanent ownership of. You do not have ownership of Spotify. You do not have ownership of Instagram. You do not have ownership of TikTok. These are things that you are renting space on at a given moment. If that service closes tomorrow, that presence is gone. And so what you have to be mindful of is that that also means every time an algorithm changes in a way where you suddenly have to pay more for ad dollars, or maybe the process by which you're acquiring people changes, suddenly you have a whole thing to relearn again. With a mailing list, you have direct access to everybody on that mailing list at any time. It is the best way to market tour dates. And also one of the best ways to market, vinyl or anything else like that, which we'll get to. So the next step here is, to introduce a pre-order campaign for upcoming releases or tour dates. There are really, a couple of ways to do this. Sometimes you'll see, artists doing, pre-save campaigns. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a music industry secret. Pre-save campaigns aren't that important. And when I say that they're not important per se, it's because what you actually want is you want to make sure that people are driving to you from the minute your song releases in real time. Pre-saves make people feel important. It's a thing that kind of started going around in the industry because they got made for a really big pop artist some years ago, and then it became, I want that. No, I want that. And it became this contest. But in reality, what you want is as much drive towards whatever it is that you're doing as possible. So if you've got a first song out and it's the pre-release track for an upcoming album, You want to be promoting that the second it hits. You actually don't want to put as much work into the pre-save campaign. The newness is what powers you. The other thing for tour dates is that tour dates, if you're working with a live promoter, they're going to want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to sell tickets well in advance of your show dates, especially if you're a newer band. This is sometimes terrifying to a new band. You might have 200 tickets that need to be sold on a show in order to even break even on the show.
Yeah.
And then you have to go, wait, how am I getting through this? And so if I'm talking to Kevin here, he's probably going, well, I haven't even sold 50 tickets to a show. And so we have to assume that you're starting from the beginning. And that means that you need as much advanced planning for the tour date promo as possible. I can tell you from experience, a live space wants to know that you are doing everything you can to promote a show you're going to play. That's it. There's no wrong way to do it. The trick is to do it, show you're doing it, and execute it. You'll notice now that we're very, very close to the buying decision point for your buyers, all of this has been action that you had to take pretty aggressively. That's okay. We're going to go pretty quickly through these last three things that you should know. Next point is, providing, VIP experiences, exclusive vinyl, merch bundles, anything that ties into the growth of the band overall. That can be, a special green variant of a record you're putting out. That can be, the t-shirt that's only available for, 72 hours. That can be a chance to meet and greet Kevin backstage because Kevin's starting to blow up and now Kevin's got 300 people to want to come see him in his show and he can only really make the time to shake hands with 30 of them. That is a very important thing in this business. Access is currency in the music industry in a way that's very specific to the entertainment world and in a way that's very unique to the entertainment world. I would argue that access is its own money to the extent that wherever you can monetize access, you should. It works for fans. Next point. You launch a limited time offer for exclusive merchandise, bundle that with music downloads or tickets. Now, that's kind of a thing where we're pulling together these two things we were just talking about at once. You're bringing the show together with the shirt, or you're bringing the show together with the record. And this used to be a whole process for how people got on the Billboard charts. Billboard has kind of put the kibosh on that in recent years, but it is still something that's very effective for knowing who your super fans are. Mm-hmm. When you're an artist, and this is the most important part of the buyer journey for an artist, you don't just want to know your fans, you want to know your super fans. You don't just want to know the people who are going to pay $20 on every show you do. You want to know the people who are going to show up with $200 in their pocket, spend maybe 20 of that on drinks, and walk out with just your merch draping them for everything else. That is one of the most important things that you could possibly do as an artist, and also one of the reasons having a mailing list matters so much. And then the last point, and this one is a really interesting way for us to be looking at this, and this is how I'm trying to kind of help people think in a full circle way. And this is something that we pre-gamed a little bit, Ada, and I loved the way you were talking about this. You want to launch a tour that combines performance with the band's own success story. So let's say that Kevin comes out, now he's at 500 cap, and he's doing 500 tickets a night. How does another artist do this? There can be that powerful moment where, he has a little vulnerability coming into it and says, hey, I want to actually show you what it's like in the green room back here. I want to show you a little bit of like the stuff that I still don't have as part of the rider yet, but it's cool because we're out here, we're doing everything that we've wanted to do. We're actually making money and we're being able to play our art for a huge audience of people that we never thought we'd get to. 500 capacity is still several steps down from, say, Madison Square Garden. But I would say that, the one thing that ties this all together, and this is something that I want everybody in the entertainment industry to think about, is always ask the question of how you measure success. I can tell you from working with CEOs over the years, KPIs are different from CEO to CEO. Key performance indicators, all those sorts of things. How many tickets you did, how many records you sold, how many people came to your show and had a good time, how many people came to your show and stood there, whatever that is. All of your different ways of showing where you had success are completely different from artist to artist. Some artists want a million Spotify plays. Some people want 100 million Spotify plays. Some people just want to know that they had 10 fans in a room that loved it.
Yeah.
And I think that understanding what truly is success to you allows you to actually make a real path forward with what your goals are next. And that is actually the journey that you have to go on as an artist, where now you understand your buyer's journey, but understanding your own journey in the process of getting there is just as important.
Absolutely, I love that. I think the way that you connected um, to the own artist is very very personal. Because for you to do a strategy for a music artist or someone in entertainment business, you need to really get close to this person, understand like
Yes.
what is it that is success. Because it's very different if you go from a B2B company to to an artist that maybe doesn't care as much about sales, more like that his art matters, that he is able to do the things that they love and still make money out of it. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
What before we wrap it up, what do you think are the key takeaways from this wonderful journey?
I think that one of the key takeaways is that, seeing yourself as a completely sincere enterprise is one of the most, meaningful things you can do to make sustainable art on a career basis. If you can view yourself as seriously as a startup does, if you could take yourself into a room and say, this is what my goals are, this is what I'm trying to accomplish, this is the music I've made, you will be able to win in every room that you go into as a musician, as any kind of professional. And I will tell you that one of the things that I do with every client that I have is that I do a full go to market strategy and a full mobility strategy and figure out where we want to be the next 6 months or so. Because if doing that go to market strategy and understanding where your real revenue is something that so few people think about from a creative perspective, but that's going to be what separates you from everybody else.
Absolutely, I loved. Thank you so much for all of these insights. It was really interesting because when we see a budget journey like this, I think everyone has been on the customer side and going through all of this. It was like reviving, like what have I seen online? What artists have done this? Which haven't? And you can really see what makes a difference. Like if you see like I'm not a fan. I'm gonna say that I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift, but she's like every single thing that we have here. I've seen her doing it, and is one of the greatest artists out there. With the greatest fandoms.
She's so smart with how she does that. She's obviously got a whole team around her that's brilliant at that too. I think that at the end of the day, though, she powers that team, and she also gives proper thanks to her team, which I think is one of her more unheralded qualities. The bonus checks that she cuts people who just drive for her tours are
Right.
truly amazing. Yeah.
It's absolutely wonderful. All right, thank you so much, Cody. If someone wants to know more about you, what do you do? Where can they find that?
The right thing to do is to go to meintheclub.com. You can also check out my weekly free newsletter, The Club List, which will show you some of how creative business and being an artist go hand in hand. And that's theclublist.net.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ada.